Yeah, that's right. We're neighbors, which I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Alex Law and 6 of his volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Is everybody a summer intern? Are you local? Are you going to continue with the campaign into the school year?
So
I'm guessing most of you are school age, right?
Right. So some of them that are going away to school, to
Right.
college, will maybe help out a bit, but probably be in college doing their thing. On breaks, help out. And then the ones that are still in high school, that are rising seniors, will hopefully help out a bit through the fall and spring.
It's a great experience. You're going to have a lot of fun. Campaigns are crazy, but in a good way. And I think, Alex, you're trying to inject a little bit of uncertainty into an area where we usually have campaigns that are awfully predictable.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call them too much of campaigns. It's just they spend $1 million on mailers that go
Right.
out and just say, we've picked this person, you don't really get a choice. And we're trying to give voters around here a choice.
And I think it's going to be fun when we post this interview, because a lot of folks are going to say, Matt Rooney, Alex Law, these guys probably agree on next to nothing.
Yeah, I mean that was in our first phone call.
Right.
You said I couldn't agree with or disagree with your policies more.
Right.
But I'd love to talk to you because we both agree that something needs to change with the corruption and the machine politics around here.
Is it fair to say that what we have in common is democracy?
That's about.
That we don't
it,
think
yeah.
there's enough of it down here, and
Exactly.
It would be healthier if we had
More
2 robust
democracy,
parties.
and then you and I can have a
Right.
honest disagreement about policy, and it have nothing to do with who knows who or who's related to George or whatever it might be.
Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from, who you are, what
Sure.
your professional background
Yeah,
is? Because
absolutely.
I know that there's going to be a lot of individuals, not just in CD1,
Mm-hmm.
but outside of this district, who are going to kind of be doing like the secret fist pumps, like, hey, he's taking on the Norcrosses.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't know much about you, because I think this is your first run for elected office, correct?
This is my first run, and I can confirm that. I mean, I was up with Monmouth Democrats, and I've been at events all across the state.
I saw a picture of you with Steve Fulop on Facebook.
Yeah. So Steve and I, we have a similar background. Both grew up as part of the Jewish community. Both went to NYU Stern. Both he took on the machine in his first run. I'm doing the same now. So Steve's a friend. But yeah, Democrats all across the state have been excited, and even ones as far north as Jersey City, Newark, wherever.
Yeah.
No one is excited about taking on the Norcross group because they're afraid. They're excited that I'm doing it, but we need to show people that we really have a shot in this, and that's what we're aiming to do. So to tell you a little bit about me and my background, so I grew up in the district. I grew up in Voorhees, went to Eastern High School, played sports there, was very involved.
I was a Paul 6 cross-country runner.
Oh, okay.
So you guys were our rivals.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm over it at this point. but-
Okay. I was a basketball player.
You're a basketball guy?
Yeah.
So no, there's no antagonism.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I went up to school to NYU Stern, went to business school, studied finance, studied information systems, had a really good experience up there in Manhattan. After that, I decided, I wanted to come back to the community that raised me, that nurtured me, and see what I could do to help. So I took a job with IBM doing strategy consulting for them, and I've been doing that for the past few years out of South Jersey. And when I decided I wanted to come back to this community, I said, okay, how can I make the biggest impact? Where can I help the most people? And as I started to learn more about what was going on in politics around here, because my experience with politics growing up was my grandfather was Mayor Collingswood, and very local politics. It was sort of like an isolated area, not sort of tied into all this machine stuff. And when I started reading about Rob Andrews and his ethical issues, and reading about George Norcross and New Republic, or Donald Norcross, or Steve Sweeney, and all these guys who, you'd think I would be aligned with because we're all Democrats. I started reading about the policies they were advocating and the things that they were doing, and it just wasn't okay for me. So I said, okay, how can I do something about this? And I learned that sort of this machine around here controls, from local elections all the way up to county to state to federal. And if we wanted to make a real difference here, if we wanted to actually have a shot at beating this machine and helping people all across the district, not just in Camden City, where we love to help as many people as we can, not just in Collingswood or Voorhees or Logan Township, if we can help people everywhere in this district, what we had to do was we had to run against the machine, against Donald Norcross at the top of the ticket. And we think we have an exciting story to tell. If I win this election, I'll be the youngest congressman in the United States of America, the youngest since the 1970s. We're bringing a progressive, exciting brand of politics that this region hasn't seen in a long time. We're out there every morning. We knock on 500 doors a day. We make 5,000 calls a week. We're doing it really grassroots, engaging the community. Just last weekend, I was out at 2 or 3 farmers markets talking to people, having conversations with real people. And I can't tell you how excited people are to have that kind of interaction. I had one person tell me the last time that they talked to any politician in any kind of honest way around here was when Rob Andrews first ran in 1991, when he went around knocking on doors. And it had been that long since any politician in Camden County took the time to talk to them about what they thought about things.
Which you don't have to. And they often brag about how they can stay in bed. And this is the elected Democrats around here talking.
Yeah.
And, for example, for the legislature, 13,000 votes just show up.
Yeah.
They haven't had to knock a door. Maybe they've gone to a beefsteak between now and Election Day, but that's it.
That's it.
They haven't had to work. You think that that's going to be an advantage, that you're catching them flat-footed, that maybe they're not used to working as hard?
Well, absolutely. And it's not only that, because they have the money that if they want to turn it on, to some extent they can pay for it. I mean, in the last election, my opponent, Donald Norcross, spent somewhere between $50 and $60 a vote, which is astronomically terrible. I mean, that tells me that no one really cares about what they're doing, and they just raised a lot of money to spend a lot of money.
You have to buy your friends.
That's something that you can say, and I won't disagree with. And we see in this district, it's a closed primary in New Jersey. We see 170,000 Democrats in this district, a large number, almost 150,000, some independent voters that could register Democrat, even if it's just for this election, Republicans that could register Democrat for this election. No one has ever needed more than 20,000 votes to win this primary in the last 20 years. So we're talking at 170,000 at the minimum, potentially more if we bring some voters into this voter pool. We need 20,000 votes to win this thing. The only year where it was any different was 2008, where it was a contested primary, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and it went up to 100,000 for the total voter in the primary. But every other year, contested or not, the primary has been somewhere between 28 and 35,000 turnout. So we believe working hard for the next year, campaigning full-time, talking to people, making these thousands of phone calls, thousands of doors to knock on, that we have a chance. And if we can get 20,000 votes, we think we're going to win this thing.
I'm curious to know what kind of reaction you've got, not from just the community at large and voters at large. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk more about that, but I think this is evidence enough that you're resonating with at least somebody, right? But from the Democrat establishment. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine it's been completely positive. I know as a Republican, when we've run campaigns in the past, we've used a similar message. Mm-hmm. That, listen, regardless of whether you're Republican, Democrat, Green, Socialist, Libertarian, whatever, you're voting for democracy by voting for us. Mm-hmm. We could sneak up on them, but we'd have a rough time. I know my friend Brian in Voorhees, he's had his tires slashed, on election eve. But then after you sneak up on them, it's very tough to win the next one because they know you're coming. So they fight dirty.
Sure.
They're proud of it. Mm-hmm. They make no bones about it. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten a negative reaction? And if you have, how have you handled it?
So a couple things to that. Yes, we have got a negative reaction in a couple different ways, and I'll tell you about that in a second.
Yeah.
First off, we try to keep our message as much as we can away from finger pointing at the Norcrosses. Now, we can talk all day about every single thing, and we have a fully documented voting record, this, that, and the other thing that the machine's done that we think aren't good for democracy. But we try to keep our message when we're talking to people about why this campaign is so exciting. Right. And why the ideas that we're talking about, middle-class Americans should agree with. And we try to make them feel personally connected to what we're doing, rather than saying, we're good because they're bad. And we try to do that as much as we can. Now, as to the negative reaction. Now, you can talk about something that I talked on my Facebook page. We have the biggest political Facebook page in South Jersey, actually, bigger than Donald's by almost 1,000 people. And we just started ours a few months ago. We talked about on there how when I applied for the voter file, which is critical for campaigns, they've given it to pretty much every Democrat that's requested it over the past 10 years. I could not find a single instance of anyone that got denied. I'm sure there were one or two at some point, but I couldn't find one. I had reporters try to find, they couldn't find any. So they denied me access to it. And why that's so critical is because the Democrats, in partnership with the data company that they use, offer that to their people for below market value. So they offer it for right around $3,000. Now, if you go to the private market to try to get it from people, market rate for it's about $7,000. And they know that that's crippling for people if they deny it. And the reason they deny it is because in that system, any Democrat that puts information into it, every other Democrat that has access to it can see it. So all of the work that they've done canvassing this, limited as it is, but all of the intelligence that they have would have to be shared with us and vice versa. Very democratic process. We're all trying to talk to voters. Why shouldn't we share data in an honest way? So they declined that to me, despite protests that I've made, emails I've done, and all of that. You can view the whole exchange on my website. And one of the biggest ways we actually got a response from them was because I asked some of my followers to please call them or email them.
And this is the Democrat State Committee?
Yes.
Okay.
So they did. Over 100 people called and emailed them, and the next day we finally got a response, and they declined to give it to us. Now, when the silver lining to that story being one of the private companies that heard about this were so angered and dismayed about the anti-democratic process going on here in New Jersey with New Jersey Democrats, or supposedly Democrats, that they gave it to us for the same below market rate that they were offering it, which was great. So we now have that data, and we're just as equipped as the machine is in terms of voter data and intelligence with that kind of stuff.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so that was a really positive thing that came out of it. I mean, there's been a lot of issues. So we sent out, I did handwritten letters to every single Democratic committeeman in both Camden County, Gloucester County, and the towns in Burlington County. That was not met well from some of the machine people.
Just knowing these people,
yeah.
I can only imagine the reaction.
And all I was doing
the
is,
genders.
I was just doing a very, normal, honest thing, introducing myself, saying, hey, I'm running. I'd love to talk with you. If we have differences, let's work them out. And sad to say that not a single one of them called me out of 500 people.
Not a single committee person.
Not a single one.
Because we're talking, some people that are going to ultimately listen to this may not understand. Like you said, it's over 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot of individuals.
Yeah, so
This isn't a room of 12 people that makes all the decisions. At least in theory, the way it's supposed to work is all these committee people come together within a certain political jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And they make decisions for endorsements.
So, but how it's been changed in this district, unlike other places in the country, and we can talk about some other things that are unique to New Jersey, is that normally the committees on municipal levels vote, and then they decide things at large.
Right.
What they've done is they've created an executive committee, which reports directly to George, that makes all the decisions. So the executive committee decided that no one was to collaborate with me. So no one responded. I would think it's their duty to just say, if I'm reaching out as a Democrat saying, hey, I'm running for something, talking about democratic ideas, more progressive than the candidate you guys are endorsing, at least to take 5 minutes out of your day to call me and say, we're not going to support you. But
right.
but
hit the pavement, but we're going to give you the courtesy of telling you.
Yeah, but it hasn't been the case, and that's okay, because as little as we're resonating with the so-called sort of people in control, we're resonating incredibly well with actual people outside. Your rank and file Democrats, people we're knocking on doors. When we knock on doors, we don't discriminate. We knock on Republican doors, independent doors, all the same, because we want to just talk to people in the community. And we know even if Republicans can't vote for us in the primary, they have friends. And we're trying to engage people and get as many ideas from all sides as we possibly can. And we're doing that every single day that we can. And that's been really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've put a lot of miles in. You said you've already knocked a number of doors. Any idea where you're at?
Yeah, between knocking on and hand delivering flyers to doors, so far we've probably hit just right around 8,000 to 10,000 doors. We've already called probably about 5,000 people. So we're about a year out.
What do Democrats tell you when you call them? Rank and file Democrats. I'm thinking, my family is full of Democrats. My uncle was the Democrat mayor in Oakland for many years.
Yeah.
These are open-minded people.
Absolutely. And when we talked to them, like this morning, we canvassed, we knocked on every door in Laurel Springs, small town just down the pike.
Very much Main Street, USA kind of American town.
Yeah, and we talked to people, and at least 5 or so. It's the middle of the day, so I'd say about 30% of people home. People that aren't home, we leave flyers for. Yeah. But the people that were home, 5 or 6 different people told me, I don't really trust Norcross. This is great to meet you. Thanks for coming by. And people at first are standoffish, but all we say is, hey, do you mind if I introduce myself? Well, okay. Running for Congress, progressive Democrat running next year. Oh, nice to meet you. And I talked to them for a few minutes. A lot of the issues that people care about are even older people, student loan reform, because they see either their grandkids or people that they know being affected by 11, 12% student loan rates that they're never going to be able to pay back, and they see banks borrowing at 1 or 2%. So they're upset by that, and that goes across both political parties.
Sure.
So these sorts of issues. I mean, another big issue around here is sustainable energy. Norcross, representing a Democratic base, first vote in Congress was for the Keystone Pipeline, and we can agree or disagree about that. But to me, that's an issue that a lot of people have spoken about and cared about. But the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. We like to say we haven't talked to a single person yet that has said, we prefer it the way it is, aside from one person who was a cousin of the family.
And if you don't have your family with you,
yeah, right,
that's game over.
Yeah.
So this is just experiential. I'm not passing myself off as an expert, but I found that you're always going to get that person slamming the door in your face.
Mm-hmm.
But you are 9 times out of 10 going to get at least a neutral reaction.
Yeah.
So if you're getting positive reactions, that's good. But
yeah, mostly positive.
But people will give you positive. The problem I see for a candidate such as yourself is name recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's one you've contemplated, which ultimately, while you can do a lot with grassroots, and me being a social media guy, the democratization of information, I think it counts for a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you going to try to bridge that money gap to be able to get your name out there between now and next year?
Sure. Well, so again, they spent $50 to $60 a vote to get 18,000 votes, which to me is pathetic. I mean, they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
If you gave me $50 to $60 a vote, I mean, we're just...
Yeah, if there was financial parity,
come on,
it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. So what we're doing, we've done a great job so far with earned media. We've had a tremendous amount of articles, blogs, this sort of thing written about us. We're doing really exciting things on social media.
I hope this one doesn't hurt you, by the way.
No, we're excited about it.
The crazy local Republican.
We are, so we're doing good things on there, turning people into influencers for us. We're going to, we don't need to have all 700,000 people that live in this district know who I am. I mean, it would be great if that was the case, because I think we'd win in a landslide. But we don't need that. We need to find a way to reach 20,000 people. That's our goal. That's the number on the wall for us, to get 20,000 votes. Now, of course, to get 20,000 votes, maybe you have to reach 50,000 people, and then 20,000 remember to come to vote or decide to vote at the end of the day.
Right.
But we need to find a way to shrink as intelligently as we can. In my background in data science and optimization, both at school and at IBM, lends us to being as intelligent as possible with this, identifying the right people to talk to, targeting and talking to them enough time so that they feel a personal connection to the campaign, because that's what we want at the end of the day, as many personal connections. I want people to know me. If we can do that and target successfully and efficiently, then we're going to be in a really good position.
And you're going to have to overcome some voter intimidation too, I'm sure. You're gonna have to have a legal team.
Yeah, well, we're gonna that and having people watching at the polls, and also that brings me to the thing in New Jersey, which bothers me the most. Politics aside, Democrats, Republicans, doesn't matter. Norcross doesn't matter. The fact that New Jersey is, as far as I know, I think the only state in the country, if not the only one of the very few, that has the ballot backwards, that lends itself to political machines. And what I mean by that is, if you look at every other state, on the x-axis are positions, and on the y-axis are names. So you'd say House of Representatives, and then Donald Norcross, Alex Law, freeholder, ba 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 ba, every other position like that. And that makes it more democratic, because people pick who they're going to vote. New Jersey flips it. So the positions are on the y-axis, and names are on the x-axis. What this allows them to do is to create the column that is the endorsed, quote-unquote, candidates of the political machine. And then you can push a button that votes for all of them. And you maybe a confused voter might go in there and say, well, I'm a Democrat. Oh, that's the Democrat button. Okay. And then they hide challengers way out in column Z or something like that. So people are looking at a very confusing ballot. And to me, especially as a Democrat, we take pride in being the party of inclusion, of being the party of equality, to endorse measures that sort of seem to shrink the voter populace because it's a confusing experience to vote, or deceive voters who are going in there trying to make a choice. To me, it's just totally reprehensible.
Now, some of the Democrats around here, especially the older Democrats I know, they think they are making an informed choice. And I know in past elections campaigning for Republicans, we've made a similar argument. Again, it may be an easier argument for you to make because you are a Democrat, so maybe it gives you a foot in the door that we wouldn't have. But we'll say something along the lines of like, listen, regardless of whether you think Republicans are awful, not awful, semi-awful, it's a vote for democracy. It's a vote for you having a representative that's going to be responsive to your interests. Mm-hmm. What I invariably get before we even get into ideology is a response along the lines of this. Well, you know what? You're making a lot of sense, and there's some issues where I can meet you halfway, but Rob, helped my nephew get his driveway paved, mm-hmm. where the assemblyman came and he wrote a letter of recommendation for a school. Mm-hmm. There's this politics that is personal element mm-hmm. that I think is very challenging around here. And I think it's one of the things the machine does well. They personalize it. So when someone says something like that to you and they're looking at politics in that very hyper-personal way, mm-hmm. how do you kind of, maybe I'm not articulating this well, but kind of draw them back out and make them see the macro
Well, what I can
picture?
tell you is when you look at the data, and we have, you'll see that they're very good at being personal with the people that they consider important. And what we're realizing is there are hundreds of thousands of people in this district, tens of thousands of Democrats that are not considered important by the machine. And they're not personalized. They're not talked to ever. Some of them have gone generations, mother, son, maybe grandparent, that haven't been talked to once by a politician asking them what they think. So although you'll find that in maybe some of the wealthier towns like Voorhees or Cherry Hill or other places where they value the donations or they value this, that, and the other thing, and favors flow freely into those areas. If you travel down to the towns along the Pike or out into some areas in Gloucester County or especially into areas of Camden, North Camden, Kramer Hill, etc., you'll see that they haven't been affected by this generosity of the machine. And that's the majority of people.
Which is a very interesting point you make. And again, I said going into this, not because I'm afraid to debate. I mean, mm-hmm. I'm a politician trial lawyer, so I love fighting with people. But I didn't want to make this ideological. But me as a Republican conservative, it's one of the arguments I always throw at my adversaries down here on the other side of the aisle. I say, you guys are always telling us you're for the poor, you're for the working mm-hmm. man. But this county's been under Democrat control. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys will take issue with that. You'll say, well, they're not necessarily real Democrats.
Yeah.
But, I drive into Camden. Mm-hmm. Then I come out and I go down the Black Horse Pike.
Yeah.
Nothing but empty office spaces, individuals who are trapped in a cycle of poverty. Yeah. We're in one of the richest states in the Union. And yet we have all of this human misery mm-hmm. and lost potential, I would say, right here, just 15 minutes from where you grew up in Voorhees, right down the road from Haddonfield, some of the wealthiest communities in New Jersey.
This is something that I tell people.
And you see a disparity with how the machine treats one area versus another. Mm-hmm. You think that that's a function of what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And I think that you and I might even agree on how I look at economic development here.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what's happened in Camden over the past 18 months, Donald, before he left the State House, passed something called the Economic Opportunity Act, which George cleared the way for. And this bill sounds nice, economic opportunity, great. Okay, we're giving money to Camden, great.
Who could be against that?
Well, who could be against that? But the reality of it is, all of the money, the $600 million that went to Camden, all went to in corporate welfare. Big companies where they're paying over $1 million per job created, and it's doing absolutely nothing, except for enriching companies like Holtec, which George is the chair of the board of directors, or the Sixers, where Philip Norcross was the broker on the deal, or other people like that, and they're not actually creating any jobs, and they're not giving any of this economic benefit to residents of Camden. Because what they're doing is they're just moving jobs from Marlton or other places into the city, and then people are just driving there, going into a gated community, leaving and spending their money at home.
Or what they've done with the schools. Again, you and I would have a very different solution for that, but it's all going into these schools that are backed by one political power broker.
Agreed. So
it's not true school choice, which is what I would support.
Well, I wouldn't support that, but I'll get to the schools in a second. But what I would say, what we should have done with the $600 million, this is where I think you might agree, is we should have taken that $600 million and given it either in subsidized loans or other forms of grants to small business owners in Camden City, and encourage the private market, businesses there, through government help. If we're going to give the $600 million to someone rather than big companies, because I've talked to small business owners in Camden, and they said, if you give me $1 million, I'd create 150, 200 jobs.
I prefer it because at least then, I prefer a revised tax code first and foremost.
Sure.
That would surprise you, but at least then you're not picking winners.
Right.
In the same way that they are right now.
Yeah.
And it's crossed over from just picking winners, which is an economic model that I reject, from crony capitalism, which is something that you and I share a disdain for.
Yeah, so to me, if we're going to do economic development,
Yeah.
give it to the small business owners in Camden. Incentivize new small business owners in Camden. Because when we do that, we'll see the biggest economic revitalization anywhere in the country. Because Camden's starting from such a depressed place that if you injected $600 million in venture capital into small businesses in Camden, it would be booming, and those jobs would go to residents in Camden rather than people being piped into the city to make it look nice on Cooper Street. There's whole areas in Camden that are totally ignored, and that's not okay to me. Speaking to schools, totally agree with you that it's worrying, to say the least, what's going on there. One of the organizations we partner with, Save Our Schools, has spoken a lot about this, how the public school system is totally being undermined and killed by what's going on with all of the money being pumped into these charter schools, which unethically are controlled by a nonprofit that's owned by the person who makes all the political decisions. How is that okay in New Jersey?
Right, and I mean, me being a graduate of Catholic schools, it's killing the Catholic schools as well.
Well, it's killing everything.
Which is the irony of it, because you would think, again, they pass it off as school choice. It's not really school choice. What you're basically doing is privatizing the public bureaucracy.
Yeah, and they doctor statistics too. So, I've had family members work in charter schools in Camden, and I know firsthand for a fact that a lot of the schools with the best statistics, 100% graduation, 100% college rate, etc., they kick kids out that don't look like they're going to graduate, and they send them back to the public school so that they can be a black mark on that school's record. And it's totally unethical what's going on with the education system in Camden, and it's not okay. Also, talking about Christie and other people, how they've talked about Camden like it's the success story that crime's going down. Totally not true. Because what they did was, when Christie laid off, or the city laid off all of their police force in 2009, crime skyrocketed, even to higher than Camden usual levels. And then they brought police back, and crime's gone down, but it's still at the same level it was before that spike.
It's an old trick, though. The freeholders used to do that in this county. They would raise taxes, and then they would cut them in an election year, when really it was still a higher levy than before.
It's like going to Kohl's. Yeah. They raise the price and then give you 40% off. Nothing against Kohl's.
Right. We'll take that part out here. Something that I think is so interesting about this discussion, Alex, is listening to you. Even though we disagree on a lot of this, I find you to be so reasonable. And although I'm sure there's a substantive reason for that, do you think it's helpful that you have a business background? Well, you've worked for a corporation, which enables you to kind of see both sides of this equation.
I always knew I wanted to go into public service in some way.
Right.
And I was considering law school, considering military, considering other options of what would prepare me best to serve my community. And I decided, I can't say a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old makes the best possible decision, but it's worked out well that way. Certainly. That going into and having a business background is a good thing, and especially going to Stern, because as a liberal person, going to Stern, which is probably one of the most conservative schools there is, not on social issues, but fiscally, it's known as an investment banking factory.
I was going to say, that's like me living in Collingswood.
Yeah. I would go into class, and I tell the story all the time that I went into a class on private equity, and the professor goes, I'm Professor so-and-so. If there's any Democrats here, just feel free to leave. So it taught me a lot about being financially smart, but applying those principles to to my other principles of progressive values. And I think that that's prepared me well. And working at one of the biggest companies in America, IBM, was great experience learning the good and bad parts about corporate culture. Traveling all over the country. My clients were Fortune 100 companies all over the place. It was California, Texas, Atlanta, New York. I was traveling every week all over the place, working in different cultures for different companies all over America. And I think that did prepare me well. Because you have to be reasonable in corporate America. If there's one thing you have to be, is you have to be reasonable, or else you're going to get fired, or the client's going to fire you, or this, that, or the other thing. There's no going over budget. It can't happen. You got to pitch the deal, sell the deal, be strategic about it, execute, be personable, be friendly, teamwork. These are all things that I had to do with work that I think have prepared me well for these kind of conversations.
But there's a lack of pragmatism in Washington, D.C. Something
Absolutely.
else that you and I would agree on.
And I think, to me, we might disagree on the cause of it, but to me, it goes back to 2007, Citizens United. Since then, we've had the least effective Congresses in the history of the United States, back to back to back to back. And to me, the flooding of big money into politics, the giving the ability of corporations to outspend to unbelievable levels, is what's contributed to the ineffectiveness in Washington. And then, yes, there were issues before that, absolutely. And we can have conversations about those. But to me, if we're going to have meaningful reform on all of these issues, if we want to have an honest conversation about energy, if we want to have an honest conversation about net neutrality or whatever it might be,
right,
we have to take corporate dollars out of those conversations, because congressmen are elected too often, every 2 years, and money coming in the door is so important to those re-election efforts, where elections now often cost, except for in rare instances, hopefully ours, when Cantor lost in Virginia, etc., is so important. So they have to listen to these corporate donors, they have to take the money, and often their vote is reflected by it.
And see, I think we're closer than you'd think, because, someone like myself that does look at money as a form of speech, I do support that proposition. But I don't think that the way things have turned out, I think a lot of that's because we haven't responded to the reasonable legislation. You've created a dynamic now where you have a complete free-for-all, where there is not a balance within the system. In your primary, I think it may actually work, insofar as, ideally what you want to have, I think, in a democracy is the ability for a Bernie Sanders to raise money to challenge the status quo. What I think you have in the Republican primary, if I could be critical of my own side for a second, I know nobody will have any problem with that. What you've had is you have a few very narrow interests now that can step in and fund somebody for which there is no basis of widespread support.
Exactly.
And it almost inflates it. It's not really free speech. You're giving certain very wealthy people an advantage.
Exactly.
That's not able to be counterbalanced. So, one thing I would do is I would say that if you're going to keep the current system, at least then allow parties to be able to raise the same amount of money.
Well, what I would say, I would compromise with you to say that money can be speech if we say that everyone has the same right to speak, same caps for everyone. So that is to say, if I go to talk to someone in Laurel Springs and they say I want to contribute, the most they can contribute to my campaign is $2,600. And I would be unbelievably grateful for a contribution like that. And that's the max that any individual person can give, unless you're going to super PACs. And it's created this incredibly difficult to understand system that only the extremely wealthy really know. And they can then funnel unlimited money that's not trackable or traceable into these super PACs, which then spend directly for candidates.
And we've seen a lot of that in New Jersey. It just happened up in Morris County in the Republican primary, where we had allegations of certain Democrat professionals participating with a Morris County PAC that was involved in this Republican primary.
So to me,
you couldn't prove it all.
Let corporations have the ability to speak with money, let wealthy people, etc., but have the same limits for everyone. Everyone can only give whatever the amount, $5,000, $2,600, I don't care. But everyone has the same limit to campaigns, and get rid of all the shadow dark money. We get rid of that.
I agree with you.
The system gets a lot more honest.
Because to me, the issue is transparency first and foremost.
Sure.
If Alex Law is going to go get $1,500, $15,000, $150,000 from Bob's Chicken, I at least want to be able to vote on it. That's the part that bothers me, when you don't know who you're supporting.
Right.
Because you can't divorce the person from their stream of cash.
Sure.
As much as we like to think so. Some can, most can.
Yeah.
See, look at all this common ground.
Look at all
we
of it.
found.
It's unbelievable.
It's there.
Every time I talk to a Republican, they're always so surprised because they see my website, they see my literature, etc., very progressive ideas. But when they talk to me, they're like, wow, Alex isn't so bad. He's an all right guy.
And I'm sure you and I could have a coffee or a beer and we could talk forever about some of the things like gerrymandering.
Sure.
Which, again, I bet we can find some common ground on
that
have really rigged the system.
And this is the kind of politics that I envision for South Jersey, in that we can have conversations about this. We both want the same thing. We want America to be a better place. How do we get there? Well, maybe we disagree, but we both are trying to go to the same place. Rather than what I fear a lot of politicians around here care about more is, where is Donald going in the next 2 years? Or where is Luke Capelli or whoever going in the next few years? And they care more about where their machine and their party is going rather than where Camden County's going or New Jersey or America. And to me, that's worrying. And that's one of the core things that we're here to fight against.
If folks that are listening to this want to be able to engage your campaign
Sure.
and get more information, where can they go?
So I would encourage anyone that's listening to this to do two things. One, go to our Facebook page. We are having vibrant discussions. We invite conservatives, Democrats, progressives, whoever to get on there, comment, have conversations. We have over 4,000 people on there now. We'd love to see that community grow. Second, if you want to reach out directly, you want to help us canvass or make calls for us or get involved in the campaign or just talk to me, go to the website, alexlawforcongress.com. On the landing page, there's a place where you can put in your email address, write a message. That message will make its way to me, and we'll either put you to work, have the conversations with you, whatever you want to do.
I am excited about this campaign.
Great.
It's for two reasons. One is because I am an unabashed, unapologetic capitalist. So the fact that I run a political blog and there's going to be more to write about this year, that's awesome. But also because as a son of South Jersey, like yourself, again, not to beat a dead horse, but the lack of democracy down here, I think, has been bad for my residents, for my fellow South Jerseyans, for my neighbors, my friends, my family. We talked a little bit about the state that Camden is still in, decades after its decline began, the state of the White Horse and the Black Horse Pike, how many empty storefronts. Anything that can add some vibrancy and honesty to that discussion, I don't see how anybody can say it's a bad thing. So, while I can't endorse Alex Law in the general election, I would certainly, if there's even a Republican running, we have to check that out.
I'm sure if I win, they'll run someone.
I'm sure there will be. But I certainly encourage everybody to find out about Alex, interact with Alex, talk to your friends about Alex, add to the discussion down here, which, like we've been saying, has been so hampered in recent years by the state of politics down here.
And what I would add is that, there have been campaigns, limited ones in the past. Last primary, two of my friends ran against Donald. They weren't real campaigns to some extent, and similar to other things over the past 20 years. This is a real campaign. This is your chance. If you're not excited or not happy or just outright dislike what's going on with politics in South Jersey, this is your chance to get involved in something, grassroots something, that is actually going to change things around here. So I'd encourage you to do that, get involved in this democracy, and I promise you we're having a lot of fun out there, and we'd love to have you on the team.
Alex, it's been a pleasure.
Great.
Best of luck.
Thanks.
And keep in touch.
All right, we'll do.